Welcome to Big Daddy Storytime. We're reading Paul Bunyan. When the stars started brightly twinkling in the night sky, lumberjacks began to gather around the campfire. Soon they start telling tales. Before long, someone mentions the name Paul Bunyan, the greatest lumberjack of them all. Now, folks say that Paul was the biggest, bountifulest baby ever born. Every day, he'd eat 5 dozen eggs with 12 buckets of oatmeal and drink 15 gallons of milk. And that was just for breakfast. Paul grew mighty fast. By the time he was 12, he was taller than his folks' house. Why, he was so big that he used a small pine tree for a toothbrush. And all the ladies of the town would have to knit for 1 week solid just to make him a pair of socks. I guess that's why Paul's mom gave him such a sharp talking to when she heard that he used his socks as a fishing net. When Paul was old enough, he set off to explore the forest that covered the land. One day, he was caught in a snowstorm. Now, normally, this would have been no big deal. Paul had been caught in plenty of snowstorms, but this snowstorm was different. It was so cold that the snow turned a beautiful robin egg blue. Paul trampled through the fluffy blue stuff. Suddenly, he saw a tail sticking out of the snowdrift. Paul pulled on the tail, and out popped a big baby ox. That poor baby ox was so cold that it had turned blue, too. Paul bundled it up and carried it to a nearby cave. Paul decided to take a break from exploring. He set up housekeeping in the cave until the baby ox got better. No one knows exactly where Paul's cave was, but it had a mouth, sandy floor. A creek ran through the back of the cave, full of cold water and plenty of wiggling fish to eat. The baby ox grew and grew, and Paul got tired of calling it a baby ox, so he shortened the name to Babe. Babe's name was the only short thing about that ox. It was 42 axe handles high. No one could guess how much it weighed. But when Babe ran, the ground thundered so loud that folks ran for their umbrellas. Paul and Babe trampled through the woods. Back then, the forests were so thick and crowded as the brushes on a hairbrush. But that was quickly changing. Pioneers were heading west. They built barns and houses and wagons and all sorts of things. That meant they needed wood. Paul became a lumberjack. Every time he swung his axe, 10 trees would fall. Paul piled the logs on Babe's back to take to the sawmill. Paul thought it might be easier to float the logs down the hill to the sawmill, but the river was mighty crooked. Our logs will get jammed in the river bend. Paul told Babe. Paul tied one end of the rope around Babe's harness. He tied the other around the river. "Pull, Babe," Paul shouted. Babe looked at the river. Babe looked at Paul. Then Babe sat down. "Okay," said Paul. "Pull, and I'll give you enough sugar lumps to fill a canyon." That river was pulled straight in no time flat. For a while, Paul and Babe worked on their own. Then Paul started a logging camp. Of course, Paul's camp was a mite larger than the average logging camp. Why, folks say that a boy could start walking one end of the camp and grow a 2-foot beard by the time he reached the other end. Naturally, the camp needed ponds for drinking water, so Paul and Babe dug the Great Lakes. Sourdough Sam was the head cook at the camp. He made flapjacks, stew, fried chicken, and spinach casserole. The loggers hated spinach casseroles, but Sam changed its name to Muscle Maker Spinach Casserole. They ate it, every bite. Yes, indeed, Sam was mighty good at cooking. His flapjacks were famous. Every morning, the kitchen staff strapped bacon to their feet. They'd skate on a grill with as big as an ice skating ring. Then the grill was greased up. Sam poured the flapjacks. He used a crane to flip them over. All the loggers loved Sam's flapjacks, but Johnny Ink Slinger loved them the most of all. Johnny was the camp's bookkeeper. He paid all the bills and kept track of everything for Paul. Johnny wrote so fast and so much that he had to connect his pen to an ink ink. To save ink, he stopped dotting his I's, crossing his T's. That saved 500 barrels of ink every week. Things went plenty well at the camp for a while, but then came the year of the 2 winters. First, it got cold. Then it got colder. Short Gunson, the camp foreman, had all sorts of problems. He rode in to chew them over with Paul. Boss, Shot said to Paul, "It's so cold out there in the woods that our feet are freezing off. We have to do something." Paul was big and strong, and he was also clever. "Tell everyone to grow their whiskers. When their beards get long enough, they can tuck them into their boots. That'll keep their toes toasty." Shot had another problem. "Boss," he said, "when I get orders for the loggers, when they yell timber, our words freeze into ice, Sickles. No one can hear anything that anyone says." "Well, I'll ask Babe to haul all the words to one place," Paul said. "Then when they thaw in the spring, we'll be able to hear what everyone said." That wasn't one of Paul's best ideas. You see, all the words thawed at the same time. So it seemed like folks were yelling all sorts of different things at once. It got a tad bit confusing. After that cold winter, Paul and the rest of the loggers were ready for a change. They took the log camp out on the road. Babe pulled the log camp along behind them. Paul and his crew logged in North Dakota, South Dakota, Washington, and Oregon, and all the points in between. For a while, Paul dragged his axe behind him because it was resting sort of heavy on his shoulder. But he stopped when he realized that the axe was digging a trench in the earth. Today, we call that trench the Grand Canyon. Yep, Paul logged a lot of land, but he knew that trees were precious, so he always left some stand. Paul got older. He could still log better than any lumberjack alive, but he decided to retire. One day, Paul and Babe just wandered off. No one knows exactly where they went. Some folks say they headed to Alaska. Others say they went back to their sandy cave. Nobody knows. But if you keep your eyes open, someday you just might meet the greatest lumberjack ever born. So what we could take away from this may be, a tale, but guess what? When Paul and Babe put their mind to it, they pulled a river straight so that they could log. And when ideas came up, my friends, Paul, even though sometimes the one with the icicles wasn't the wisest of ideas, he still did his best to make decisions. And also, same thing with you. So always make wise decisions when you decide on things. So be blessed, and I will see you next time on Big Daddy Storytime. Come back and visit. Bye bye for now.